think it's showtime. Dylan, are we ready? Yeah? Okay. All right. Good morning. Welcome to year 72 of the Morning Forum of Los Altos. So 2 more years than the Queen reigned. Hello to everyone here at LAUMC. Pardon me, this looks like a good crowd. And we have, hopefully people got the link to the live stream, which I sent out yesterday and this morning about 8:45. Thanks to Dylan DeMott, who has returned to be our techie in charge. Thank you, Dylan. I am Anita Nichols, president until June 30th, 2023. I'm privileged to stand here. What? Did somebody say they can't hear? No. I am privileged to stand here at the top of a pyramid of many, many volunteers who have come before me, who have given their time, talent, and treasure to this lifelong learning enterprise. And speaking of treasure, thank you again, all of you, donors, large and small, including Los Altos Mountain View Community Foundation. Every dollar counts toward our expenses and our speaker fees. I want you to know the people serving you right now. Oh, but before I do that, we have a special guest, Dave Samuelson and Sonia Samuelson, who is the new and current pastor of this church. Could you stand up and be recognized? Thank you. And they are open on Sunday. I want you to know the people serving you right now. Please hold your applause until I give you permission. Haha. Our ex officio board member and webmaster for more than 11 years, Paula Turk. Paula, stand up. There you go. You may sit down next to Eric. You can sit down. Okay, hang on. No, not on the chair. Not on the stair. Okay, go ahead. Safely. There you go. You may sit next to Eric now. Eric, will you raise your hand? Oh, there you go. Okay. Let me see. I lost my place. Oh, yes. Parliamentarian Marge Shively, who will be meeting with the nominating committee shortly, period. Go ahead. Hold your applause, please. I didn't give you permission. All right. Publicity, Liz Nyberg enlists writers for the town crier articles and otherwise spreads the word about our organization. Nope, wait a minute. Hospitality, Catherine Tomino, who organizes our ushers and photographs the speakers, and she's been a member for a very long time. Thank you, Catherine. Shar Thorson, membership and marketing beast. If you didn't sign up again, she will hunt you down. And before we, when we were going through COVID upheaval, she made 100 phone calls to find out, are you going to sign up? Can you do webinar, etc. Our treasurer, who has taken us even farther into the digital age with our transactions, Ilona Lindauer. Great. Karen Fox is our secretary. She's currently on medical hiatus. And Veronica Needleman, second vice president, who organizes lunches for the board and speakers. Thank you. And just to let you know, if you're on the board, one of the perks is to have lunch with the speaker. Then you get them up close and personal. You get to ask questions that you didn't have a chance to ask in the Q&A, and it's a good thing. And now, our distinguished program chair, Janet Harding, who will introduce our speaker today. And now, a round of applause.
Thank you, Anita. Now that our morning forum opening business for season 72 has been completed, it's truly an honor to introduce today's speaker. Kike Calvo is an award-winning National Geographic photographer and author of many books. He's a speaker and an educator who focuses on cultural and environmental issues. Kike has been to dozens of countries, working on stories as varied as belugas in the Arctic to traditional Hmong costumes in Laos. Kike's images have been published in National Geographic, the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, Time Magazine, Rolling Stone, Vanity Fair, and many others. This is astonishing, actually. He pioneered the use of small, unmanned, I don't know if they were named, unmanned aerial systems to produce aerial photography as art, and also as a tool for research and conservation. His early work with drones was proclaimed as genius in the 2019 National Geographic Almanac. Kike is also known for his iconic photographic project, World of Dances, in which he explores the intersection of dance, nature, and architecture. In 2018, Kike launched the Adventures of Pili. It's a project with a mission to create books and other educational materials designed to increase children's awareness of global environmental issues and to foster multilingual literacy. Partnering with local NGOs and companies and readers, thousands of free bilingual books have been given to kids living in communities around the world. Kike's been a part of scientific river expeditions in Colombia, Brazil, and Peru, and over the years he has joined numerous National Geographic expeditions. In October 2018, 6 friends from Los Altos met Kike on an outstanding National Geographic voyage to Patagonia. His presence here today is a result of that friendship. Please welcome Kike Calvo.
Thank you. Thank you, Janet. Can you hear me properly? Yes. Okay, so I would like to start by, hopefully this is going to stay in place. I'm really happy to be here. As Janet was describing, I met members of this community on a trip in 2008, and as I would disclose later, they were key and essential of the future of some of the projects that I have been working on. So I call this presentation the power of creativity, even though originally I used to call it the evolution of a professional photographer. And many people were thinking that I was going to be talking about natural history and biology and whales and sharks, which is something that I've been doing all over the world since I was very young. But in reality, what I'm going to try to do today is to build the connections between life and photography. So hopefully by the end, you're going to see my evolution, but it's going to make you reflect about your own evolution too. I came to the conclusion that there's very strong relationship between life and creativity and vice versa, and it has helped me overcome some of the most hardest challenges in my life, but also I have used it as a way of not only surviving but thriving in a positive way and impacting others in a positive manner. So hopefully you're going to enjoy this presentation. It's very visual. You're going to hear a song that I wrote. It's going to be the second time that it's been heard in public, so hopefully you won't be crying because you think it's very bad. I think it's... and let's get started. So I really like this quote. Imagination is the beginning of creation. You imagine what you desire, you will what you imagine, and at last you... This quote is by an Irish writer, and somehow it sums up my career and my existence in the creative world. I want to apologize for holding it as a reference in case that I need it, because I'm on a different time zone. I want to start with a tradition, something that I've been doing pretty much by the time that I met some of the members of this community in Patagonia in 2008. And no matter where I am in the world, I start with my most challenging project, still the project that changed myself completely inside out. It's probably not the type of project that you have in your mind when you hear about a National Geographic photographer, but truly it's actually the essence of everything that I have done since that moment in time. So hopefully you understand why it's been so challenging, and hopefully technology is gonna work. So this has been my most rewarding yet challenging project till now. So that's Pilar. She happens to be 7 years old now. And she was the inspiration of a project that Janet was describing, The Adventures of Pili, that it has taken life of its own and somehow is driving my own creative life. I'm wearing a baby in front and a drone on my back. So that's been part of my life since some time. And I always, I don't know, one day I said, this is something that changed myself, so I think it was fair to present it to the audiences that they were meeting me, so they really understood why I became the person that I am today and all the elements that affected. But I want to put into perspective and to be honest. So this is Pilar on the left, but 6 months ago, I had another source of inspiration, and that's Luna. So now I have many more years of inspiration to keep on writing books. And it amazes me how similar they are, even though nowadays they're very different. One is 7, the other one is 6 months today. And these were taken with an iPhone, which is something that I've been teaching all over the world. People think of phones just to make calls, but they don't realize there is a piece of technology that, if used properly, is a stunning way of telling our own stories, and you'll hear and understand why. So to put things into perspective and to show you all the lessons that I learned during the pandemic, which was not very easy for my family, I have to say that. It was very challenging. I was living in Colombia. I don't know how much do you know about Colombia. It's the most biodiverse country in the world. You can go there and see 2,000 species of birds, more hummingbirds than you can ever dream. So that's what I was doing over there. I opened a company called Colombia Photo Expeditions, and I was taking people around photographing birds and nature, and I even applied to have the Colombian residency. So I just want to ask you, if somebody wants to guess, how many days did I enjoy my Colombian residency? Anybody wants to take a guess? 0, they say over there. Any other numbers? So actually 0 is the right answer. Why? Because I got my paperwork, I went on an expeditions to Patagonia, to Chile and Argentina, and I never came back because the whole pandemic started and my life took a completely swift change in direction. I ended up somewhere completely different. So I never used my residency in any way. But I learned many lessons, which are the lessons that I want to share with you. And I need to do all these introductions so you really understand what is coming afterwards. So sorry if I'm speaking too much. I prefer my photos to talk instead of me. But there were many lessons learned. The first lesson that I learned is that as we transit through life, our camera, not only being a photographer, I think that applies to whoever writes poems and writers and all type of visual artists, we become witness of all the experiences that we live. But something that people forget is that we're also documenting other people's lives, and there's very valuable lessons. So I've been staying with the stories because they're very valuable, and sometimes we tend to forget those lessons. So I came to the realization that I'm creating a visual diary of my own existence, and you are too. Every time you take a photo and you don't realize where that photograph could end up or the importance to someone. I photographed people that was the last photograph that they were taken. I photographed, I mean, I don't want to get into that, but like there's value in that. So photography is completely intertwined with my life, and as the phone has become almost an extension of our hands, it's also something that you're expeditions, we teach our guests how to use phones properly because you can narrate things in a very powerful way. And now that you understand this forward of what is about to come, let me show you. This is me arriving from Patagonia after many days stuck on a ship because we couldn't return. Chile rejected us, Argentina rejected us, and I end up exiting the whole situation with a special plane from Falklands arriving in Miami. That's why somebody was asking me, where do you live these days? Well, I guess I am in Florida, not for very long, but that's what is happening. And I wrote a piece for the Safina Center. So I ended up on a temporary house. This was when the whole COVID was starting and everybody was so afraid. I ended up camping on a temporary house on that patio with all my clothing spread all over the floor, because I didn't know what to do with it. So I watched my family being inside for almost 10 days. But I know this sounds very crazy, but that moment in time, it was very traumatic. We ended up being on the cover of this magazine, of this journal of public health here in the US. And all these images were just taken with a phone. So without realizing, we were telling our own story, but also the story of many other people out there. And I'm going to show you my most published images ever. I wonder if you can guess what topics were they. Probably know what you're expecting. I took them with my phone. They're not sharks, they're not dolphins. And these are the images. So when I came back from that trip in Patagonia and I ended up in Miami, I recorded the whole return back. And my images were published all over the world, like on the Wall Street Journal, you name it. Not only these are just small samples, but what is funny is that I have been photographing whales and sharks and really crazy situations, and something that I was just producing with my phone became something that was seen all over the world. So that was my own realization of the power of having a phone and a tool. And I think now the presentations start getting more fun and more interesting as we move on. So this is the story of a dreamer. I was a child that was completely obsessed with the idea of discovering faraway places. You know, National Geographic magazine and the movies, you know, like all these remote cultures, that was something that was attracting me on a regular basis. So this presentation is going to build the visual connections between whatever happened in my life, good or bad, and the visual content that I produce. And hopefully you will enjoy. And I'm going to show you some images, but I want you to understand what was the origin of this presentation. There's two things that happened. The first one, I was hired by Coca-Cola to speak in Forum Istanbul, and they wanted a regular guy that was doing his best to inspire others in terms of conservation around the world. But the second one was that we were living in Panama at the moment, and I had two cars following me home all the way from the airport. And they stole every single piece of equipment that I owned until that moment, something that I had been buying for years, cables, iPad, laptops, every technological thing that I use for work, it was gone in a blink of an eye. So I started to think about my own involvement with my work, and I embracing the wabi-sabi philosophy that nothing lasts, nothing is finished, and nothing is perfect. And what I brought to the table on top of my own gear. So let me show you some of these images that some of them were produced with slides, okay? So I will be 50 very soon, so I started in the industry when I was 17, so many years in the making. So hopefully you're gonna see and you're gonna enjoy. Something that can you hear me if I speak over music a little bit? I'm self-taught in photography. My background is economics. And I ended up using photography as a way of expressing myself and discovering the world. That's a beluga. Let me share some facts about some of these photographs. That's Cuba in Guanacabibe's National Park. I'm a Spaniard, so I've been going to Cuba for many years, and you'll hear a project later. This is Holchan Marine Park. Baja California. The funny thing is that I come from a place with no ocean. So I bought my first underwater camera from B&H, and it took me years before I used it for the first time. I know this sounds strange, but it's the reality. That's an anemone. That was shot with an Iconos 5. I don't know if you're familiar with that camera. And when I talk about composition and creativity, I tend to share with people that simple tends to be best, like many things in life. We tend to create things that are very complex organizational systems. And as it happens in photography and in advertising, if you can conceive a message that is powerful and very short, it will stay with people forever. So that's what I try to do. That was shot from the World Trade Center. Interesting thing is that I got my sailing license on those boats later on in time, and I also photographed the collapse of the World Trade Center. That's in Canada. You see how simple it is. It's about graphic elements. That's Churchill, Manitoba. I know this is not a photographic audience, but I want you to look at how do I organize the images, how simple they are. And to make something look very simple, in reality it's very complex because you need to remove all the elements. That was photographed in Spain, and it's a series of 3 photos. And I don't really use Photoshop on my work. That's the actual reflection of a hand held underwater. That photograph technically is not perfect because I cropped the tip of the tail, but still is very powerful. Those are octopus babies. And I started to explore the world in many ways, and photography became my way of overcoming all the challenges that were being given to me. And you'll see that as we move forward in this presentation, I think you'll understand me better on how my mind works these days. But let me tell you something. So I took the decision of buying all the equipment again, which was a crazy decision at the time for me, but I bought everything again. But the story does not end there. I embarked on a trip, right? And I went to the Amazon. I'm sure you're familiar with the Amazon. It's the second largest river in the world. Well, it could be the first before the Nile. It depends where you think or where you consider as being born. So I bought brand new equipment and I went on an expedition. So guess what happened in an interval of 30 days? I was in the river and we were going to a pink dolphin conference in Iquitos, Peru. We missed the larger vessel that was going to take us from Colombia to Iquitos. And in the middle of the night, we bumped into a tree log and we went down in the Amazon River. All my brand new, I'm laughing, I didn't laugh back then. All my brand new equipment went down the river, brand new. The only interesting thing is that the first time my insurance did not cover that robbery, so I had to rebuy everything again. The second time I changed insurances and they pay right away and they start using my case as their advertising to prove how good they were. But it was very traumatic because, you know, the Amazon can be a dangerous place at night. You don't see the edges of the river, so it was quite a challenge. But I want to share where it all began. I want to show you, I'm originally from Spain. That's why I have this accent that no matter how much I practice, it will always be here. So I was born in a city called Zaragoza. It was built by the Romans, and it was a crossing. We have the Basilica of El Pilar that was painted by Goya, if you like art and paintings. And these are some of my images that I took for a book for the International Expo back in 2002. And these are the visual influences that I had when I was growing up. And if you can increase volume of the music a little, thank you. mentioned, people ask me many times, how can you be so creative or come up with this visual or these ideas? I think it's a muscle and you need to practice. And last night at dinner we were talking about the Shaolin monks and discipline and repetition and repetition and repetition. So creativity is the same. When you sit down and you want to write your first book, normally it's kind of a disaster to look at a blank page. But if you keep at it, it becomes second nature. I was counting the other day. So overall, considering translations, I think I have produced more than 54 books today. And you'll hear that story, but it's about practice. So many of these photographs were taken flying on helicopters, and you just practice and you see images go through your mind very quickly. So that's how we can grab them so quickly, because we train ourselves. So when you see a National Geographic photographer, is that we can produce content really quickly, no matter if it's raining, snowing, we're there and we're 100% accurate. But the only way to achieve that is with an obsession of repetition and perfection. Many of these visuals were inspired by Japanese art that I thought it was so simple but yet so beautiful at the same time. That when you're giving a Japanese dish and there's nothing there, but the combination, the graphic combination of element, textures, and patterns is absolutely perfect. So that's what I try to envision when I produce my own work. So let's move forward, because I don't know how good I'm doing with time. I don't have my computer, so I don't have reference.
It's almost 10:30.
Okay, so I've been speaking for how long? Okay. So here you probably recognize Jacques Cousteau, the undersea explorer. He really had an impact in inspiring me to explore the world. At the time that the internet was not there, how I discovered the outside world, I discovered that if you send a letter to magazines to the address that was on the side of their ads, right, they will send you like a media package. And of course they knew I was not media, because I was probably 10 years old typewriting letters that didn't make any sense, but they knew they were making somebody happy. So that's why I was discovering the whole world. I sent a letter to Jacques Cousteau to the Oceanographic Museum in Monaco. He never got back to me. But then when I became a professional photographer, I wrote to his son, starting an email saying, when I was a kid, I wrote to your dad. He never answered back, but it would be fantastic if you can write the foreword of my upcoming book. So he did, together with David Douillet, which is one of the most iconic National Geographic photographers. So this is me. That was my pet Pancho. And as I said, the idea of Indiana Jones, going to places and discovering cultures, but then coming back to an audience and inspiring them and sharing them things about the planet so they could care about the culture or the diversity, that's something that was very important to me. And somehow, by Hollywood movies, I became obsessed with Wall Street. And I decided I want to be a stockbroker. And from one day, I forgot about exploration, and it was all about economics. So I started studying economics. And this person that you see here, it was a very famous radio person back home that happened to be my dad. So I grew up in radio, and I started studying economics, and life is unpredictable. He was diagnosed with cancer. So I promised him that I was going to finish my degree and then do whatever I wanted with my skills. So that's what I did. I graduated, and the rest is history. So his passing became the most complicated things to my family, but the beginning of what I am today. So there's always a positive of the negative that I have discovered as I move on. And I started exploring the whole planet. I don't know how I did it, because I come from a normal family, and I ended up trading photographs for spaces, for trips, and I went all around the world. There's more than 100 countries that I've been today without repeats. And if you notice, there were no humans in my photographs at the beginning, because I was coping with my own reality. If you can raise volume slightly, please. That's Bonita Lighthouse, by the way. That's a Milky Way that was actually published in Time magazine. An interesting thing is that both my brother and we became professional photographers, and we went all over the world dealing with our family sadness by producing images. So photography is really in route with the direction that we took in life. I got stuck on a blizzard in the Arctic when I photographed. I borrowed the mayor's car and I made the wrong decision, so there's many stories that I don't have time to share them, but every photo is a small note from my own personal diary on the planet. But I want to move forward because I think I extended a little bit because I don't have my timer here. I just want to, those are baby seahorses. Those are Kimik, half wolf, half dogs. But I just want to move forward because I want to share the whole presentation with you. Of all places, I ended up in the US with a scholarship. After my father passed, I was offered many scholarships to keep on studying economics in Bergen, in Norway, different programs, and I rejected just to be home with my mom. And one day, the university called and said, we're opening a new program in the US. Would you be interested in going? I'm like, sure. Where? And they told me, well, Idaho. Like, where? You know, we're talking about many years ago, so Idaho for a Spaniard means like nothing. I had no idea. So I went to a bookstore, and I bought, I guess, a Lonely Planet of the time. And I looked at Moscow, Idaho, and there was no description. It was like a university college town with one theater, one bar, and that's it. Like, sure, I'm going. So I ended up in Idaho, but there's something amazing that happened there. I met my wife that we were talking on day first that I arrived, or day second, and we've still been together. My wife works at the UN, has worked on climate change for a long time. So that's me on the upper corner. I didn't have this on my presentation, but I found this the other day online, so I incorporated it. And even though the University of Idaho is not an Ivy League, even though we ended up being at Yale for 4 years and my daughter was born there, that place switched the direction of our travel on this planet drastically. And I started to understand the act of making a photograph, the value of something that is physical, that it can be a very special memory to somebody, but also a record of history and a very valuable tool. And this place in the middle of nowhere, I ended up photographing the Lionel Hampton Jazz Festival and spending time with the top jazz performers in the world without knowing who they were. So I photographed Lionel Hampton, like Paquito de Rivera, all these people that now I know who they are, many have passed, but I documented. I was even in his birthday when the Native American Indians were doing a powwow and he was playing jazz. So this place brought me into a world, even though it was in the middle of nowhere. So that was my first cover of the yearbook in that university. And I'm going to share something that I think I have never shared before. There was an editor there, and somebody was stealing film from the lab where I work. And all the people that they were there, they fired me. And they accused me of stealing. And I was so sad because I really loved what I was doing so much. But the crazy thing is that I think it was 2 or 3 years ago, the person that fired me reached out to me on Facebook, apologizing for what she did. So we're now connected, and I was very happy to hear that apologize, because it's somebody that makes something like a very bad mistake that really affected me. But let's move on. I was an intern in the Galapagos Islands at the Charles Darwin Station. I think I'm going to skip this presentation, this slideshow. I kept on going back, and to teach people that you could produce great visuals with a $300 camera, I went back again and I produced some of this. So let me show you really quickly. This was like a very low-end camera. It's not so much about the tools, it's more about who's behind them. But I just want to continue. And one day we woke up and we had this thing called the internet. No longer advertising was unidirectional. They were sending us all these messages. It was a conversation, so I became kind of an influencer in my industry and learning many things. But one of the things that I learned is that it is impossible to change people's behaviors and how they think in a way. But as an artist, I could create a framework that they could experience how I saw the world. That's something that I learned. So I really opened my eyes. And I switched the way that I was photographing until then. I became obsessed with the human interaction with nature. Before it was only about nature, and then it became all about we humans enjoying or destroying nature. So this is a story that I did using Leica. I used to photograph with rangefinder cameras, and these are children that they're connected to water one way or another. You see, very different from the way that I started documenting the world. If you want to increase volume a little bit, please. So these are taken with a fixed lens, which means it's not a zoom, it's just like a 50, a 20, it's like a fix. So I walk back and forth when I'm documenting. See, very different from the way that I photograph. So as life was happening to me and around me, the way that I saw and I used my creativity completely changed. You see, I started in one direction, and by the end of the presentation, you'll see the direction that it has taken. So I learned, and I'm going to try to do this quickly. I'm a Spaniard, so for me, speaking very short time is not very easy. So I learned perseverance. So at the University of Idaho, I was introduced by a National Geographic photographer called Phil Schofield. I was an intern, not an intern, I was an assistant for a weekend, and he connected me with somebody in New York City called Marcel Saba that opened Redux and Marcel Saba Press. So I went there with my portfolio thinking that I was the best, most wonderful photographer on earth. Big mistake. And I walked to his office, I think it was in Park Avenue at the time. I said, Marcel, what do you think? So he looked at me and he smiled and said, well, this is lovely, come back in 10 years. So I'm like, wow, okay. So that was a big bucket of cold water into my face, but it was a big lesson. And I came back not 10 years after, but 15. And I opened a small stock agency that is still surviving despite that the whole industry has changed. And they represent my work and many other photographers. I also learned that we have our own path, and this expression is more connected with artists. You're going to see some of my dancers' images, and it's good to be inspired the same way that I've been inspired by other artists in museums or in galleries, but we should not copy, because it is impossible that we recreate what other people have done, because they have their unique vision. So we have to find our own personal vision. Each master has its own book of tricks. That's very important too. And I don't really believe everything or what I'm told. I always do research and I try to figure out. So I started working for the New York Times. There's a story of how I began, but I think I have to move forward. How much time do I have left? Okay, so I'm not gonna tell you how I started working for the New York Times, but if you read the Sunday paper, I used to produce many of 36-hour stories. So this is an example of one of them.
La esquinita de mi hueso, que han caído los esquemas de mi vida, ahora que todo era perfecto. Y algo más que eso, me sorbiste el seso y me desciende el peso de este cuerpecito mío que se ha convertido en río, de este cuerpecito mío.
So I did many stories like this. Interesting thing is that you go there for 4 days and you need to open all doors to make these photographs happen. I learned that you always have to knock twice on the door because I was initially rejected. They told me I was not good enough to work for the time, and then I came back and I was hired. But the other thing that I learned, that it was not so much about who I am as a professional, but as an individual, what I brought to my work and my life and whoever was around. That was a big lesson that I learned. Like, yes, they want to work with good photographers, but they also like to work with good people. So that's something that it changed. And this is another project that I became involved with. These are photographers of the Cuban Revolution. I tracked all of them, whoever they were still alive, and I went to their homes and I created a series of portraits. Those are the Marielitos that left Cuba in the 90s. So they documented all the history of Cuba. I want to show you more work because time flies and I want to get to what is really important. This is one of my favorite projects ever called World of Dances. Started as an advertising campaign. They wanted to bring young generations to theaters, and I decided, I accepted the job under the condition that I could experiment visually in any way that I wanted with the whole dance troupe. I've been doing this for years with the New York City Ballet, Dance Theater of Harlem, and these are some of my dance photographs.
Ma, Jemo, umabula nomba nika. Jemo bula nomba nika. Adi kamila miye, unongo janga vena jeo matapono. Ibanjana lungele waba, osike kariya.
these were ballerinas of the National Ballet from Cuba that they left the country and they're now dancing in the US. So this is a project that combines architecture, the environment, and artistic stories all in once. That's Kroon Hall, where we spent 4 years at Yale University. That's one of the solo or main dancers of the New York City Ballet that happens to be from my hometown, and actually I have a YouTube channel, so I'll be interviewing him very soon. So he's from my city in Spain. So that's some of my dances, and I was going to share some stories here of how complex or interesting the life of a photographer. So I'm going to skip this part, but basically, if you know or familiar with this photographer that had a section, a fashion section in the New York Times, I appear on that section, and there's many things. Everything happened during a one single day photographing for World of Dances. That's Beatrice Ost, like a fashion icon. These are Disney actors, and I bump into all of them within one day working on that particular project. And Janet was describing drones, right? So when everybody was talking about privacy and technology, I became fascinated with the idea of having a platform that will bring me up in the sky at an affordable price. So these are like visual sketches that I did at the time with very old technology, with the intention of documenting or recreating the concept of birth. And there's no Photoshop, this is the very old technology. So if you want to increase volume, please. And you will get to two of my favorite images of all times that took many, many hours to produce. So these are all visual sketches of what I was trying to do based on an idea that I had in my head. But they don't quite work, you know, like the elements, they're not there. These were all attempts. And then the magic of serendipity brought everything together in a single photograph. So you're gonna see soon which images they are. Still, you know, very confusing, not strong message there. And then this happened, that it resembles the umbilical cord coming out of the dancer. This is a slow motion shot from a drone when nobody was doing this. Now it's pretty easy to do. When they started, this was very difficult to do. And then the other photograph that I love, this one too, but it's the following, which resembles a blanket made out of water, which is this one. You don't see it so well on this screen, but basically the ocean was engulfing the dancers, and we spent hours and hours until this vision came to be. So that's why Nat Geo referred to me as genius, not because I am a genius, but because I had the vision of doing something that was not being done at the moment. These are images from Colombia that I'm gonna skip because I want to show you other things. Can I extend a little bit over time, or when should I finish? It's okay? Okay, then I'm gonna show it to you. So these are images from Colombia. As I said, the most biodiverse country in the world. My wife is Colombian, my children are half Colombian, and I am fascinated by this place. I just published my first book on visual anthropology with foreword by Wade Davis, because I documented an indigenous celebration that happens in a particular place that nobody had really recorded. So I want to show you some of the beauties that I was doing before the pandemic, and I'll be back soon.
Quando o sol vai caindo sobre as águas, num nervoso delírio
If you've seen the movie Encanto, which actually I interviewed somebody on my channel that was part of that movie, and I was invited to be part of some workshops. If you haven't seen it, I recommend you see it. You know, the grandmother is living in a household and then something happens and they need to leave. That was the story of my wife's family. They had to leave everything behind. One night, they marked a line on the floor and said, leave or you won't be here tomorrow morning. So they left properties, they left everything behind. So the stories of Colombians are stories of resilience, very powerful. So I recommend you watch that Disney movie because the story of Colombia. So you see beautiful birds, beautiful colors. Photographically speaking, this is done using multiple flashes at the same time. So we cross all the flashes and that's why we can freeze time in 1/10,000 of a second or more. And I like music, so this music is called Fado. If you've never heard it before, it's Fado from Portugal.
Chamando por Camões numa saudade.
And I spent lots of time in the Amazon, and as I said, I sank in the Amazon, so I have a love-hate relationship. And I lead expeditions with National Geographic twice a year on the Amazon River, and it's one of my favorite places. So in one of these trips, not with them, on different projects, we were called because they had a pink dolphin tied up on a canoe to be sold. I don't know who will buy a pink dolphin, but I guess somebody wanted to buy a pink dolphin otherwise. So that dolphin had been inside a canoe. The mom had been around for a week until she left. So we came with the Peruvian military to rescue that dolphin, and this is the story. And you see how far I've gone from the initial beautiful images to telling stories. To see, we're getting closer to how I feel today and how should I be using my skills. If we can increase. So this is the Amazon, very beautiful, very different. That's a pink dolphin. They're born gray, and when they grow up, they become pink, as in really, really pink. So we did a whole operation to rescue this dolphin in the middle of nowhere. We brought it on our own small boat. We created a pool. We brought it on trucks. That was a crazy ordeal. So that's inside a truck. And dolphins, they can choose to stop breathing on purpose. So if they don't want to breathe, they will just die. And the sad story is that the dolphin chose to stop breathing just when we were reaching a rescue center in Iquitos. So it was a very sad story, and no matter how much effort we put into it, the end was not a happy one. And I always get asked, like, what is your favorite destination? And I always say, the one that I'll go tomorrow, because it's more about the journey and people that I meet, the lessons that I've learned. And of course, I've seen beautiful places everywhere, but it's not so much about the places, but people that I cross paths with. So these are some visuals of images that I've taken. I was just mentioned to someone that I was an editor at the Associated Press in 50 Rockefeller Plaza. I started as an intern, actually. And there's another story behind that, but I don't have time. So this was photographed next to Ted Turner's building when they were renovated on that square. So this is actually a slide. And let me show you some of the visuals. So you see some of the stories. That's the US Airways plane in the Hudson River that I photographed live by chance because I was there. That was the first day I was using a Leica camera. That's a pellet in the eye of that owl that somebody had shot. This is Cuba at the end of the special period, and that was a father that was going into a national park to kill deer to feed the children when there was no food. It's a story I did for my grandmother on the dancing horses of Jerez. Shark finning in Hong Kong, playing like the lost tourist. So you see all these images, whether you like them or not, but I concluded that they're like my visual story, but there's many stories within the stories, which is something that fascinates me up to today. And this is like a fisheye lens. I don't use it too much, but sometimes we do, just to give a different perspective. And one of the things that I could tell you if you want to improve your photographs, even though this is not to teach photography, is simplify what is around you. So you have to eliminate everything that is not needed and focus on the important things. Very similar to what happens in life. So photography is the same thing. If you can just focus on what is important, then the work speaks by itself because it's meaningful. So you start off by choosing stories. That's Salma Hayek, that I bumped into her when the US Airways plane landed there in the river. This is shark finning in Kota Kinabalu in Malaysia. So all these stories that I've been photographing over the years. I was reading about this the other day. When you see somebody do something that seems very simple, it's because they have really mastered what they do. So in photography, it's the same. Keep on doing it, because my first photographs, they were really bad. If one day I should present them so people will have fun of me or all together. And then the pandemic happened, and I became a transplanted. As I said, I was in Colombia, I had furnished a new house. There were so many plans, and suddenly I ended up in Florida where I had nothing to do. I didn't have any furniture. All my equipment was back home. All my clothing is still back home, most of it. But I learned many things. So I started photographing whatever wildlife I found around. That was a very skinny bobcat during the pandemic that was running around where we were. But I started thinking about something that is kind of the end. It's not the end, but it's the period that I am right now with my career and with my energy. And it was the idea of legacy, you know. I've been photographing so many things. My images have been published everywhere, like, okay, great, so what? And it was more about like what's coming next. So I came up with this idea of starting to, actually, initially it was my daughter Pilar, and that made me reflect about the future and the idea of legacy. So during the pandemic, I started writing children books like crazy. And I don't know if I should do this or not, but there's two people here that they believe in this project, which are the Tafs. And I just want to thank them because together with Carl Safina, they were the first people that they had they trust on this project. So they've been keen and they've been essential for this idea to happen. So members of this community actually were the ones that triggered what you're about to see. So I want to thank both of them. So there's so many books, and they're all life stories. So for example, The Tale of a Flightless Mosquito that I was telling Pam this morning, on the right side, I wrote as a class project when I was 10 years old. So I rescued that class project and I turned it into a book. So the story of that book, they're all bilingual, so we always do English and another language, is that there's a mosquito that is born without wings. So he's always dreaming about having wings, having wings, having wings. So by the time he has access to buy or hire somebody to build wooden wings, he realized that his happiness comes from helping other mosquitoes fly. So that's that story. And they're all beautiful stories. The Big Purple book is about death and how do you cope with something very bad happening in your life. The Untold Story of Destiny is the story of a Venus flytrap that falls, you know, like the way they're an endangered species in North Carolina. They're only growing on the side of the road, so normally the way they grow, they fall and they grow up in a small badge, kind of in a family, but in this story it gets separated from the family. So along the road, all of those that they were supposed to be, like the fly, which is their food, becomes their friend. So I use all these metaphors in nature to teach children. We have donated thousands of books in remote communities in the Orinoco. We've translated them to Ukrainian and donated them to refugees from Ukraine, both in Poland and within the country, through the press office. And this project has become I don't know if I would say my obsession, but my project of love, and I devote so much time to it. So this is the first time you're gonna hear the song that I wrote, and I'm not a musician, as I was describing. So during the pandemic, we spent so much time with my daughter that I was thinking about education. I became a National Geographic certified educator just to incorporate all those notions into my books. And for many days in a row, and this is the point of the presentation, you don't think I'm a little crazy, I start hearing a song, a melody in my head over and over and over. And I don't know music, but now I do a little bit. So I started to record myself. Then I started to learn basic music or basic piano, and this is the score that I came up with. So what you're about to listen is the song that I wrote. I've been learning piano for 2 years now, and it became the official music for this project that you will understand better this now. So this is the song that I wrote. It's being played by a musician in Georgia, a former Soviet Union country, and that's my song. So if you want to raise the volume a little bit. I think it's the second time that it's been listened in public. So be nice. I always believe in the universality of music. And this quote has been in my mind for a long time. No man ever steps in the same river twice, for it's not the same river and he's not the same man. So, and I'm gonna finish with, just give me 1 second. I was gonna show you artists from all over the world have been doing versions of this song, which I guess I have to skip, otherwise we won't have time. This is samba in Brazil, then that was done in Romania, that one in Afghanistan, in Spain, and those are some Yale students. But I just want to finish with what it has become the official version of The Adventures of Philly, with that song that came to my mind during the pandemic. And I worked together with Enzo De Rosa, which is an Italian pianist, and we've done a piece for cello, piano, and violin, which is what you're about to see, and then that will be the end, and shows you what we do with this project. And you can increase the volume because I will remain quiet, hopefully. Un recuerdo para mañana, it's a memory for tomorrow. normally of these books, they are in places where there's nothing. You know, probably the most valuable thing in that household will be those books. So it takes sometimes days to get them there. That's Mongolia, the Gobi Desert. It's Uganda. So that brings me, thank you. One more thing, which is just the quote by Virginia Woolf about creativity that I love, and yeah, that's what I want to say. It was a pleasure to be here. I hope you have enjoyed my and what we have put together. And as I said, as I always say, never stop. That's the key of creativity. Thank you. You want to do questions, or there's not enough time for questions? Okay, so you can ask the question and I can say the question if you want. Yes?
So I'm curious, when you do your underwater
Yes.
pictures, do you have a zoom or are you in, are you in full gear?
Okay, so the question that we have here is that when we produce or we create underwater images, how do we do them, right? Like if there's a zoom, there's no such thing as a zoom when we work underwater because the water has lots of particles floating. So if I was to photograph yourself from distance underwater, it would never work. So everything that you see is normally done underwater with a wide-angle lens, meaning that if there's a whale, the whale is right here, with a lens that is this big. So that's how we normally, if there's a shark, the shark is right here. Because in order to get the maximum quality, you need the less distance between the subject and your camera, or the photographer that is behind the camera. Okay? Yes?
I'm wondering, as a photographer, when you print out on your shoot, it takes a lot of time to go through your images. I'd like to know how many you keep, where
Okay.
you store them, and do you
Okay, did everybody listen to the question? Okay, so the question is like I go to all these destinations, I produce, how many images do I produce? How quick or slow do I go through my work? How many do I keep, correct? So we create thousands of images. The interesting thing about, or the particular way that I work when you see those dancers, I don't photograph automatic. Many of those images were taken with a rangefinder. If you're not familiar what is a rangefinder, like a Leica camera, in order for me to focus, I need to move manually and get two images, overlap them, and when they overlap, they're in focus. There's something called hyperfocal, that's more complex to explain right now, but the way that I do is I don't use like a machine gun, I shoot one by one, so some of those images is only one trigger at the peak of the action. I don't delete anything, I keep all my work, I archive everything, I can find any image that I have produced during my whole career in half second because everything has metadata. Metadata, like I included all the metadata, like location, descriptors, so that's because I still license my work to organizations and companies all over, so I need to be able to find them. And I don't delete things, but I can tell you, so I used to photograph for the Associated Press and the New York Times, so I'm very quick editing work. So even producing YouTube videos, as I say, I have a YouTube channel and I can produce in the speed of a lighting because I'm trained for it. So you can give me 10,000 pictures and I'll give you the best 10 at the end of an hour. And I use colors and I use stars to classify everything and narrow down how we do it. Yes, but my suggestion is like never delete images in camera or on your phone because you might have something there that is very interesting and you don't see it. And sometimes there's images that technically they're not perfect, but they have a purpose for someone or for yourself in the future. So some of the images that you see here, by the time that I took them, maybe they didn't have any value to me, but now that I look back, like wow, like that picture of Lionel Hampton, that's iconic. So, and I photograph, as I said, September 11, and so many things that happen to be there. So yeah, it's like an archive. Yeah. Any other questions? No? No? Yes?
What's your favorite camera? Or what do you use more often?
My favorite camera. So my favorite camera is the one that I have with me. I do many workshops teaching how to use phones properly because it has become a tool. Many of the videos, I have adventures in Antarctica and the Amazon, everything has been produced with an iPhone. And even though people think this is high-end technology, no, it's been done with a small iPhone and my drone and that's it. And even some of the interviews. I use these days like Sony cameras, Nikon, all of them. I mean, yes, but I don't put so much importance on the gear itself, but like when people travel with me, like I think they end up understanding a little bit of my vision, and I think that is the key. It's not so much if you have a long lens or a short lens, but like understanding what is happening around you so you can capture it properly. And not all the pictures, they need to be descriptive, the same way they do in advertising. You can inspire somebody with a semi-abstract image and connect with their childhood just by adding colors and combination of patterns. Yeah? Any other questions? No? Yes?
If you could go on one dream trip, where would you go and why?
Oh, that's a very good question. That is a very good question. You got me there. So I've been to more than 100 countries today. Some of them I don't even know how I got there, but I did. That's a very good question. Do you want one in particular or like You know, I didn't expect this kind of question. You know, I have everything prepared, it's not written there. Okay. If I had to choose a trip, I don't think it would be so much about the destination itself, but to bring, for example, my daughter, like to be on a trip and share some of these passions that I've been transferring. So it wouldn't be one location in particular, but being able to share. I think that would be, maybe I'm not answering your question, but I like places that they combine culture and nature. You know, like some of these trips we do with Limbla, that you're pretty much, you are in Brazil and then you see the culture and then the animals. I think I find them fascinating. So sorry for the question that is so boring. Yeah, I like, as I was telling this morning, I like to inspire others. So sometimes for me, it's not so much about my own experiences, but I'm thinking, what can I do with the images that I get so I can use them doing something else? So that has been, my wife thinks I'm a little crazy. So sometimes it's not so much about personal enjoyment, but like, what can I do with the visual so I can have an impact afterwards? So, yeah, so both my daughters, they inspire me, especially the first one, yes.
I have a question. Would you give us an email in case somebody thinks of a question?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I don't want to do advertising, but I encourage you to look for my YouTube channel. It started during the pandemic very slow. It's my name. We already surpassed 1 million views. Some of the videos, they've been watched more than 27,000 hours. So initially it was created in Spanish, but now I have English content. So I bring very interesting people and I do live interviews. So I interviewed the director of photography of National Geographic, the first female. The other day we had Wade Davis, Carl Safina, different people that come on board. And my email, yes, I can give you my email. It's my name, which is actually a nickname for Enrique. It's Kike, K-I-K-E, Kilo Eyes, Kilo Echo. My last name, Calvo, C-A-L as in Larry, V as in Victor, O as in Oscar, @gmail.com. And you can find me on Instagram, you can find me on all media. And I'm very good at responding, so if you have a question and you hear me here and you want to ask something, I think we have a question, yes?
Yeah, with all the beautiful places you've been,
Yes.
is it difficult to stay optimistic given all the threats of climate change to so many of these places?
Okay, so that's a fantastic question. I'm an optimist. So when we were sinking in the Amazon, like, wow, this is great. Really? So that's me. What is happening with the planet is worrying to me, like it's worrying many other people that they do what I do because we see it. We've seen the icebergs melting, and this has been happening for many years. What is happening here with the weather, I've seen it in so many places, and I'm lucky enough to go back to the same places over and over and over, and a place that was magical for a reason, I jumped into a reef and it's not there anymore because it's been exploited the wrong way. So I am positive in the sense that with education and understanding, humans can change. I don't think always decisions are made because people are bad. It's because sometimes, I don't know what's the English expression, but ignorance can make them make choices that they're not even the right things for them. So the reason that we started this project was thinking of the people that crossed paths with me when I was a kid and how they shaped my future. And I was thinking, okay, all these kids that they have all these resources, endemic birds, they are the ones that need to become the guardians of their own gardens. Because yes, we can do it from here, but they need to do it. So I think the answer and the secret is education. And with many other people of my colleagues, that's the conclusion. Or Carl Safina, for the last 3 years, I have a fellowship with the Safina Center in New York. If you haven't read his books, I encourage you to read Carl Safina's book about the world and conservation. And it will become an in-residency fellowship starting in January. So I really believe in a positive way that change can be for good, but there's some drastic measures that need to be taken, I think. And especially with the oceans, if people continue withdrawing resources and not giving back, it will reach a point that there will be nothing there. And that I've seen, and it's happening, and it's worrying. So that's why education with my daughter, I use my daughter, but it's all the daughters and all the boys around the world. I think they're the future generations that will make a difference. So I'm an optimist. Yes, any other questions? So I hope you have enjoyed, and it's been a pleasure being here. Thank you.